The ornate doors of the Galactic Senate chamber hissed open, with a sound that had announced the arrival of diplomats, conquerors, and supplicants for over 3 millennia. Today it announced something unprecedented, a human walking alone into the heart of galactic power. Ambassador Thylax of the Centauri Collective felt his secondary heart skip a beat as the primitive biped strode down the crystalline aisle. The creature wore simple black clothing. No ceremonial robes, no technological augmentations, no visible weapons. Just a small leather satchel slung across its shoulder. "Impossible," whispered Senator Vexthai, her chitinous exoskeleton clicking nervously. The Sol system was glassed 3 cycles ago. The Eternal Emperor himself led the final assault. The human continued walking, its footsteps echoing in the vast chamber that housed representatives from 47 star systems. Every eye, sensor, and optical organ followed its movement. The Drakmari delegation flexed their battle-scarred limbs. The ethereal void speakers flickered with uncertainty. Even the ancient crystalline minds pulsed with confusion. Marcus Chen had practiced this moment 1,000 times during the long journey from the ruins of Earth. He'd rehearsed the words, calculated the angles, prepared for every possible response. But now, standing before the assembled might of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations, he felt remarkably calm. The presiding officer, a towering hegemony war marshal whose species had conquered 17 systems before joining the Senate, raised 4 massive arms for silence. "State your designation, creature." No human vessels were detected approaching the system. Marcus stopped precisely in the center of the chamber, where the great seal of galactic unity was embedded in the floor, a symbol now stained with the blood of 1 billion human worlds. He reached into his satchel. "I am Marcus Chen, formerly of the Terran Colonial Defense Force, currently the last official representative of humanity." His voice carried clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "I came to return something to its rightful owner." The War Marshal's optical clusters narrowed. "You speak of impossible things. The Emperor's fleets reduced your pathetic species to cosmic dust. There are no survivors." "Funny thing about dust," Marcus replied, his hand still in the satchel. "Sometimes it gets in your eyes." A ripple of unease passed through the assembly. The Zephyrian delegation began powering their defensive shields. The cyborg representatives of the machine concordat ran rapid threat assessments. "The Eternal Emperor declared the human extermination complete," Senator Vexthai hissed. He broadcast the final bombardment across all networks. "We watched your homeworld crack like an egg." Marcus nodded slowly. "Yes, Earth is gone. My wife died in the orbital bombardment. My children were vaporized when Luna Station fell. 300 billion humans turned to ash in a single day." His voice remained steady, conversational, but the Emperor made one critical error. The War Marshal leaned forward, weapon systems humming to life. "Speak quickly before we correct that error permanently." He assumed that breaking our worlds would break our spirit. Marcus smiled, and something in that expression made the assembled aliens instinctively recoil. He didn't understand that humans don't surrender. "We adapt." With fluid motion, Marcus withdrew his hand from the satchel. What he held made the entire chamber fall silent. It was a skull, ancient and crowned, its eye sockets hollow yet somehow still radiating the malevolent intelligence that had once controlled half the galaxy. The Eternal Emperor's distinctive cranial ridges were unmistakable, as was the ceremonial neural interface that had linked his consciousness to the vast war machine of his empire. "Impossible," the War Marshal breathed. "The Emperor is immortal. His consciousness transcends physical form." "Was immortal," Marcus corrected, holding the skull aloft. "Turns out immortality has its limitations when you're dealing with creatures who specialize in extinction-level warfare." The revelation hit the chamber like a shockwave. The Eternal Emperor had ruled for 10,000 years, expanding his empire across the galactic rim, consuming civilizations and bending them to his will. He was the boogeyman that kept entire species awake at night, the shadow that fell across star systems before they vanished into his empire. "You lie," snarled a Drakmari war chief, his battle-scarred hide rippling with barely contained rage. No primitive species could challenge the Emperor's might. Marcus set the skull on the chamber floor with a hollow click that resonated through the absolute silence. "The Emperor made the same mistake you're all making right now. He saw our ships, our weapons, our technology, and assumed that was all we were." He began walking in a slow circle around the skull, His audience transfixed. He counted our fleets, calculated our firepower, measured our industrial capacity, but he never bothered to understand what makes humans different from every other species in this galaxy. And what would that be? The question came from the void speakers, their ethereal forms barely visible as they flickered with curiosity and fear. Marcus stopped walking and looked up at the assembled representatives. We're the only species that evolved from persistence hunters. Every other race in this chamber developed intelligence to avoid predators, to hide, to negotiate, to find safety in numbers or technology or isolation. His voice grew quieter, forcing the entire chamber to strain to hear him. Humans developed intelligence to hunt things bigger, stronger, and faster than ourselves. We learned to track our prey across continents, to outlast them, to adapt our tactics until we found their weakness. We became the galaxy's only apex predator species. The implications settled over the chamber like a gravity well. Several delegations began quietly activating emergency protocols. When the Emperor glassed our worlds, the survivors didn't surrender. We scattered. We adapted. We began to hunt. Marcus smiled again, that same terrifying expression. It took us 18 months to track him across 7 star systems. Another 6 months to isolate him from his fleets. The actual kill took about 30 seconds. The War Marshal's weapons were fully online now, but his aim wavered. Even if this is true, you're still alone. One primitive against the assembled might of the galaxy. Marcus reached into his satchel again and withdrew a small device. The readings it displayed made every sensor in the chamber scream warnings. Actually, I'm not alone. While I was walking in here, my colleagues were taking their positions. Turns out it's remarkably easy to smuggle quantum demolition charges into a station when no one considers you a real threat. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates scrambled for exits that had mysteriously sealed shut. Emergency systems activated and failed. Panic spread like wildfire through species that hadn't known fear for millennia. You're bluffing, the War Marshal said, but his voice carried no conviction. Marcus shook his head. Humans don't bluff when they're hunting. We simply eliminate the threat. He looked around the chamber one final time. The Eternal Emperor thought he was dealing with another primitive species to be conquered. You all think you're dealing with a desperate survivor looking for revenge. He picked up the skull and placed it back in his satchel. You're wrong. You're dealing with the opening move in humanity's counteroffensive. We've already taken your Emperor. Your fleets are next, then your worlds. Marcus walked toward the still-sealed doors, which opened at his approach as if recognizing a new authority. He paused at the threshold and looked back. The age of human extinction is over. The age of human expansion begins now. The doors sealed behind him with a finality that resonated through the chamber. In the silence that followed, the assembled representatives of 47 star systems realized they were no longer the hunters. They had become the prey. Outside the station, hidden in the asteroid field, 300 human ships dropped their stealth fields and began broadcasting a simple message across all frequencies. The hunt continues.